Hello, second grade Cougars. It's Mrs. Bellatash. I want to just do a little review. For the last 2 weeks, we've been changing matter. We put solids in water. Sometimes the solids would absorb or soak up the water, right? Sometimes the solids disappeared. They dissolved inside the water. And then if we left the water out, the water disappeared. It would evaporate. It would go from a liquid to a gas. And then we talked about adding liquids to liquids. And if we added liquid to a really viscous liquid, if we took the honey and added liquid water to it, it was less viscous. It was more thin. Sometimes the liquids didn't mix, like the oil and the water. The oil always floats on top of the water. So we saw how solids and liquids interact with each other. And today we're going to look at another way that we can change matter. Today in our experiment, what I want us to do is see what happens when we add heat or subtract heat. Now you might be saying, Mrs. Bellatash, when you subtract heat, you're adding cold. But in fact, that's not what you do. When you add cold, you are really subtracting heat. We're going to start our experiments with adding heat to a bunch of different materials. We're going to start with solids. Okay, to see how matter changes if we add heat, this is what I have. I have one Cheez-It. You can have a cracker, any kind of crackery type of thing. I have a pat of butter. I have an ice cube. And I have a couple of chocolate chips. And then I have some bowls, and I'm going to put some hot water. Now, not boiling hot. I don't want you to get burned, but pretty warm, so I can put my finger in it. It feels hot, but I'm not going to get burned. So I'm going to put some hot water in the bowls. And now I'm going to take my solids and I'm just going to let them float on the water, okay? So I'm not going to push down. I'm just going to let them float on top of the water. And now we're going to look down on it from above so you can see what's happening. Here's the chocolate chips. Doesn't seem like anything's happening. Maybe they're looking a little shinier. I don't know. Okay, here's the ice water. Ooh, the ice is melting very quickly. It's going from solid water, ice, to melted water, liquid water. Wow, look at the butter. The butter started out as a nice little pat of solid butter, and it is changing. It's melting. Here's the Cheez-It cracker. I don't see anything happening to the Cheez-It cracker. Interesting. Okay, I'm going to go back over and look at the chocolate chips. I don't really see anything happening. I'm going to get a little stick and see. Ooh, they're looking like a little softer. Ooh, yeah. Look at that. Oh, they're getting kind of soft. I can push on them. I'm going to come back to the chocolate chips in a minute. How's the water? Wow! Look how much liquid water is in with the ice now. Okay, I'm going to leave it in the hot water. All right. I'm going to put a stir stick here so it doesn't tip over. Okay. And, ooh, the butter is almost completely melted. Ooh, look at that. And let's see my Cheez-It cracker. No, nothing has happened to the Cheez-It. Back to the chocolate chip. Ooh, Oh my gosh. It took a little bit longer, but the chocolate chip is melting. Oh, the ice water. I don't see any ice left. Oh, there's one tiny little piece of ice left. Oh, I think it's gone. The ice melted and turned into water. I'm going to take it out so it doesn't spill. Here's my butter. Ooh, look at that. It is really melty. I'm going to take it out, and I'm going to take a look at the cracker. Nothing happened to the cracker. I'm going to go back to the chocolate chips. Okay. Oh man, they are really melty now. All melted. So when we took some solids, we took butter, we took ice, we took chocolate chips, and we added heat to those things, they melted. Did the cracker melt? No. So adding a little extra heat to the cracker did not change the cracker. It did not melt. But these things did melt. I want to now put them in the refrigerator, and we're going to take away the heat that we just added, right? We added heat by putting them in cups of warm water. Now we're going to put them in the refrigerator, and we're going to take away the heat that we just added. Can you make a prediction about what might happen? Okay, second graders, so I'm in the teacher's lounge at school, and we just melted those materials. We melted the butter, we melted the chocolate chips, we melted the ice, we did not melt the cracker. And now I'm going to take those materials and I'm going to put them in the refrigerator. So remember, when I put them in the refrigerator, I'm going to take away the heat. So I'm going to shut it in there, and I'm going to leave it there for about 30 to 40 minutes. I have come back to the refrigerator to take out these materials that had melted, and I'm going to take a quick look and see what happened to them. So now the butter had been a liquid. Now it is a solid again. It's not quite the same shape. Before it was a square. Now it's just taking the shape of this container. The liquid water, the ice had melted, and even though it's cold, it's still a liquid. I think I need to make it colder in order for it to turn into a solid. Here's the chocolate chips. So they melted and they kind of spread out. Now they're a solid, but they didn't go back to the same shape. And the cracker, nothing happened when it got hot and nothing happened when it got cold. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and put this water in the freezer and see if I can make it turn into a solid. Okay, second grade Cougars, so I have got some liquid water, and it's in my cup, and it's taking the shape of the container, and it pours, and if I poured it on the table, it would spread out because liquids pour and flow and spread out. They don't make a pile. And I'm going to do something. I'm going to put it in the freezer here. So right now it is about 10:30 in the morning, and I'm going to take this liquid water and I'm going to put it in the freezer. And then I'm going to come back in about 2 hours and see what happened. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to use these tiny little cups, and we're going to see what happens to the shape of the water. And I'm also going to put in a bottle of water that's completely full, but I'm not going to put a top on it. So I'm going to put it in the freezer, and we're going to see what happens. So I want you to see that I filled the cups right up to the top. But of course, since it's a liquid, if I poured it too high, it would spill over. So the cups are filled to the top with water. The bottle is filled to the top with water. So I'm going to shut the door of the freezer, and we're going to come back in a couple of hours. So we started off with some chocolate chips, butter, ice cube, and a cracker. When we added heat, they melted. When we took away the heat by putting them in the refrigerator, they turned back into a solid. So when things can go back and forth, melt, and then return to a solid, we say that those changes are reversible. You can change them back and forth. They are reversible. In order for the water to become a solid again, the refrigerator was not cold enough. We had to put it into the freezer so it could take away more heat. And when we took away more heat, the liquid water turned back into a solid. So add heat and something melts. Take away heat or add cold and it turns into a solid. We can say that it freezes. So I want to talk a little bit about irreversible changes. I have a pan here, and I'm going to put some butter in it. Oh, I've got a solid piece of butter. I'm putting it in the pan, and guess what's happening to the butter? It is melting. If I wanted that butter to turn back into a solid, I would put it in the refrigerator. But I don't want it to turn back into a solid. I am now going to take an egg. This is actually an egg from one of my chickens at school. And I'm going to crack it, and I'm going to add it to my pan. I am cooking my egg. I'm heating it up. You see my butter is all melted. My egg is cooking so nicely. I'm going to turn the heat off. Now, I'm just wondering if I could take this egg and put it in the refrigerator now. Do you think if I put my egg in the refrigerator that I could take it back to being a liquid egg? No. This is an irreversible change. Once I cook my egg, I cannot change it back to a raw egg. If I have a cake, and I put the cake in the oven, put the cake batter in the oven, and I bake the cake, I can never get liquid batter again. All right, so this has been a lot of fun. If we take chocolate chips and butter and we add heat, we can make them melt. There's melting. If we take the chocolate chips and the butter and we subtract the heat and we turn it back into a solid, we have freezing, melting and freezing. Those things, melting and freezing, are reversible changes. By adding heat or taking away heat, we can change that matter. However, if we cook an egg, if we bake some cake batter, that is an irreversible change. Please get your science notebook, and I want you to glue in this page, Changing Properties. And it says, how do properties of materials change when they are heated or cooled? So, when it gets blank, a solid changes to a liquid. So what happens to the solid in order for it to change to a liquid? It gets hot. So when it gets hot, a solid changes to a liquid. We say the solid, what does it do? It melts. We say the solid melts. Now, when it gets blank, a liquid changes to a solid. What happens to it? It gets cold. We take away the heat and it gets cold. So when it gets cold, a liquid changes to a solid. We say the solid freezes.